We got some questions about Richie.
That's not true. That's a lie.
Stop!
What's wrong with you?
No! Where's Richie?
Why don't you want my pops listen to this tape, Francis?
The story kicks off in 1956, right in the heart of Chicago. We're introduced to a humble-looking tailor shop run by an elderly British man named Leonard Burling. Despite his quiet demeanor, Leonard isn't just any tailor. He once worked at a top-tier fashion house in London. But for reasons of his own, he left that world behind and set up shop in the U.S., crafting high-quality suits for the city's
Doesn't mean...
elite. Assisting him in the shop is Mabel Shawn, a sharp and ambitious young woman with dreams that stretch far beyond Chicago. Their shop has gained quite the reputation, drawing in wealthy customers, including a particularly powerful group, the Boyle family.
Say something, too.
Now, these aren't just rich folks. They're one of the most feared mafia families in town. They don't just visit Leonard's shop for suits either. They use it as a drop-off point for secret messages. One night, Richie Boyle, the only son of the mafia boss Roy Boyle, stops by the shop with his father's trusted right-hand man, Francis. Richie is there to pick up a letter, and as always, Leonard stays out of their business, keeping himself busy with his sewing. But tonight, things take a turn. Inside the stack of letters, Francis finds one from a mysterious group called The Outfit. Sensing the importance of the message, Richie tells Leonard to step outside so they can talk in private. While waiting, Leonard chats with Mabel, who excitedly shows him a snow globe she just received as a gift. She has a whole collection of them, each representing a place she dreams of visiting. Paris, London, Barcelona. She wonders why Leonard, who could have set up shop anywhere, chose Chicago of all places. Their conversation is cut short when Richie and Francis finish their business and leave.
Besides his shears.
After they're gone, Leonard casually mentions to Mabel that the clockmaker next door has asked about her, hoping for an introduction. But Mabel shrugs it off. She's already got someone special in her life. Leonard, ever observant, figures out that she's seeing Richie. Concerned for her safety, he warns her about getting involved with someone tied to the mafia. But Mabel insists she can handle herself.
Trying to get me to go on a date with the guy who works at the watch shop?
Then, changing the subject, she asks for a raise, hoping to save up for her travels. Leonard, always the perfectionist, says she'll have to improve her tailoring skills first. Later that night, after closing up, Leonard stays behind to finish some work. He dozes off at his desk, only to be woken up by the sound of the door opening. It's Mabel and Richie sneaking in for a private moment. This confirms Leonard's suspicion about their relationship. As they talk, Richie vents about Francis, his so-called adopted brother. Richie resents him, believing Francis is only trusted by his father because he once saved Roy's life.
Best at it. It's like,
Meanwhile, Francis has been growing suspicious.
Francis, did he do something again?
He's convinced there's a traitor within the Boyle family leaking information to a rival gang, La Fontaine. Their conversation is interrupted when Leonard accidentally knocks something over. Acting fast, he pretends to be asleep, and the couple eventually leaves, unaware that he overheard everything. A few nights later, Richie and Francis return for their usual mail pickup. Inside the envelope, they find another letter from The Outfit, this time with a cassette tape. Sensing trouble, they rush out to report to Roy Boyle. But things escalate quickly. Later that same evening, Francis storms back into the shop, dragging a bloodied Richie with him. Richie's been shot, and Francis is desperate for help. With no other options, he forces Leonard to stitch up the wound, despite the tailor's protest that he's no doctor. Leonard eventually patches Richie up, though without any painkillers. The poor guy nearly passes out from the agony. Meanwhile, Francis grabs the mysterious cassette and tells Leonard to keep an eye on Richie while he hunts down a tape player. Leonard refuses. He wants no part in their business, but Francis isn't giving him a choice.
Their suspicions? I'm useless.
Right now, the shop is the safest place they've got. Before leaving, Francis explains that the tape contains wiretap recordings of someone within the Boyle family working with the FBI. The mafia has enemies all over, and plenty of people would kill to get their hands on that evidence. Francis and Richie had originally planned to play it somewhere else, but before they could, they were ambushed by members of the La Fontaine gang.
one of our spots.
That's how Richie ended up getting shot. Francis is determined to find a player and listen to the recording. It's the only way to figure out who the traitor is. As soon as he's gone, Richie, barely conscious, starts to move. Mr. Leonard claimed that he had heard about the tapes and the mole within the Boyle family from Francis.
Francis told you that.
Curious, he asked Richie if he suspected anyone from their own family of betrayal. Then Mr. Leonard suggested that the informant could be someone close to the Boyle family, but not actually a part of it. As he continued stitching fabric in his chair, Mr. Leonard casually admitted that he was the one who had been leaking information to their enemies. Richie froze for a moment, then burst out laughing, thinking Mr. Leonard was just joking. The older man chuckled along with him and resumed his sewing. Richie dismissed the idea, saying there was no way a simple tailor could be a traitor. Mr. Leonard corrected him, explaining that he wasn't a tailor, but a cutter. He clarified that anyone with a needle and thread could be a tailor, but he had spent years mastering the craft at an elite fashion house known as the Row.
I'm not a tailor. I'm a cutter.
Sorry.
After a long apprenticeship, he finally earned the right to open his own shop. The conversation shifted back to Francis, who was determined to uncover the mole within their circle. Mr. Leonard then speculated that the real traitor might be Francis himself. Soon after, Francis arrived at Mr. Leonard's shop. Before he met with Richie, Mr. Leonard whispered to him that Richie was suspicious of him and had even opened the suitcase he had left behind earlier. This meant Mr. Leonard was stirring the pot, playing both sides against each other. Influenced by Mr. Leonard's words, Richie began questioning Francis, wondering why, out of all the gunfire exchanged with LaFontaine's men, only he had been injured while Francis was untouched. Francis shrugged it off, saying he had just been lucky that night. He then suggested taking the tape straight to the designated screening, but Richie objected, insisting they should wait for their father, who would be arriving soon. Their argument escalated into a physical fight over the tape, and in the chaos, they realized the suitcase was empty. Instantly, they turned on each other, pulling their guns. Richie fired first but missed. Francis, however, shot Richie in the neck, killing him instantly. Desperate, Francis searched for the tape, assuming Richie had hidden it. Shortly after, Mr. Roy and his men arrived at Mr. Leonard's shop. Francis, panicked, asked Mr. Leonard to stall them while he cleaned up Richie's blood and hid the body. By the time Mr. Roy walked in, the floor was spotless, and Francis had concocted a lie about Richie's whereabouts. He told Mr. Roy that Richie had taken the tape and left without saying where he was headed. Mr. Roy ordered Francis to go find Richie and bring him back. While waiting, he sat down with Mr. Leonard and confided that a powerful mafia organization called the Outfit had networks all over Europe and America. He revealed that the Outfit had offered an alliance to the Boyle family because they were the only group brave enough to challenge LaFontaine. To help them, the Outfit had provided an FBI surveillance tape that could expose the traitor within their ranks. Mr. Leonard feigned surprise, asking why Mr. Roy was sharing this information with him, as he had never done so before. But Mr. Roy had already figured out that Richie was still in the shop. His coat was still hanging by the door. Knowing Richie would never leave without his coat in winter, Mr. Roy was certain Mr. Leonard was hiding something. He pulled out his gun and demanded the truth, but before Mr. Leonard could say anything, Francis suddenly entered the room with Mabel. Fearing for Mabel's safety, Mr. Leonard quickly made up a story. He told Mr. Roy that Richie had felt ashamed because Francis had taken down 4 of LaFontaine's men while he had failed to shoot anyone. To prove himself, Richie had supposedly gone back to LaFontaine's hideout to take out some of their enemies. Mr. Leonard added that Richie had forbidden him from telling Mr. Roy so that he wouldn't worry. Mr. Roy then turned to Francis, asking why he had brought Mabel. Francis speculated that Richie might have gone to her place since she was his girlfriend. Mr. Roy questioned Mabel, but she denied knowing anything. However, Francis interrupted, mentioning that he had spotted a bloodstain on her carpet, which could be Richie's. Losing patience, Mr. Roy resorted to force, demanding the truth from Mabel. Mr. Leonard quickly intervened, trying to calm him down. It was revealed that Mr. Leonard had lost his wife and daughter in a fire years ago, and he had since treated Mabel like family. Suddenly, the phone rang. Mr. Leonard answered, pretending to receive a call from Richie, who allegedly claimed he was hiding from LaFontaine and needed to be picked up at a specific location. Hearing this, Mr. Roy and his men rushed out to retrieve Richie. Francis stayed behind, saying he would keep an eye on Mr. Leonard and Mabel. Once they were alone, Mr. Leonard revealed the truth. Mabel was the traitor. Since she had been romantically involved with Richie, she had gained access to crucial information about the Boyle family, which she had been selling to LaFontaine in exchange for money. Knowing that Francis would eventually catch on, Mabel had sought the FBI's help to wiretap the Boyle family, ensuring their downfall. This way, she could protect herself while eliminating the Boyle organization entirely. Mr. Leonard had known about her schemes all along, but had let her continue because she had dreams of making enough money to travel the world. To protect her, he had hidden the tapes. Moments later, LaFontaine and his men arrived at the shop to pay Mabel for the tape. However, before the deal went through, Francis proposed a plan. He and Mr. Leonard would use a secret code so he could ambush LaFontaine and take him out. When LaFontaine arrived, he handed Mabel the money, but instead of following the plan, she and Mr. Leonard double-crossed Francis. They informed LaFontaine of his presence, leading to Francis getting gunned down by LaFontaine's men. Once LaFontaine and his gang left, Mr. Leonard revealed his final move. The tape they had given LaFontaine was a fake. The real one had been sent to the outfit to stir conflict between them and the Boyle family. Mr. Leonard had also kept the original FBI tape so that Mabel could hand it over to the authorities, ensuring both the Boyle and LaFontaine groups would be wiped out. He advised Mabel to take her money and start a new life. That night, Mr. Leonard packed up his belongings and set fire to his shop, destroying all evidence. However, before he could escape, a badly wounded Francis suddenly rose and attempted to shoot him. The shot missed, only grazing Mr. Leonard's arm. At that moment, Mr. Leonard finally revealed his true past. He had once been a mobster like Francis. After leaving his gang and moving to London, his former boss had tracked him down, setting fire to his home and killing his family. That's why he had come to Chicago, to start over and become a better man. The film concludes with Mr. Leonard walking away from his burning shop, leaving his past behind in pursuit of a fresh start. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, take care.